Are you trying to lose weight and want to know the safest and most effective way to do it? Or maybe you're confused about the conflicting information about nutrition and hype about GLP-1 meds. Is taking one even right for you? Well, Ashley Koff, dietitian and author of Your Best Shot, the amazing new book that came out this week, is going to walk us through all of our options to achieve and maintain a healthy weight naturally or with a medication. We're going to get into the science of what's going on in our bodies that prevents many of us from being able to lose weight and keep it off, particularly over 40, and get the most effective strategies we can use to optimize our body function and start getting results that last at any age. We'll also weigh up the benefits and side effects of GLP-1 meds, how to get the best results if you're on one, and the most effective way to titrate off the meds and maintain your results if you don't want to be on one long term. I'm also going to ask her about creatine and magnesium and other supplements that are getting a lot of press right now. Ashley is one of the most high profile and respected dietitians in the United States. She is the founder of the Better Nutrition Program. She is the nutrition course director at UC Irvine and a faculty member at the Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy, where she teaches their course on obesity and weight management. A go-to nutrition expert on the Today Show, Good Morning America, and others. Ashley was among CNN's top 100 health makers, and she speaks all over the world, educating the medical community and the public about strategic nutrition. Ashley's superpower is meeting you where you're at and looking at your whole story to create a personalized action plan that fits your personality and needs. She takes the information and makes it practical, and she's all about what's doable and making better, not perfect choices to reach your health goals. She is a dear friend of mine and the dietitian that I go to because she's like an encyclopedia of nutrition. She's always up with the latest research and gives a really balanced opinion about things after looking at all of the data. So I am really excited for you to have this information and get some proven strategies that you can start using today. So let's just dive in and get the skinny from Ashley Koff. Oh, Ash, we get to have a conversation with other people listening instead of on our phones, which is so great. So,
Uh-oh.
dear listener, I hope you get a cup of tea or bevy of your choice and sit down because we're going to talk about weight health and gut health and how to be healthy and happy with Ash. So, this is personal for you. You have lived this. You have gone through all the motions that the average person goes through. So tell me about that journey for you as a child and then a teenager, a college kid, and then as an adult, your journey with weight health.
Yeah, well, the first 20 years of my life were totally a journey with weight. And that's the super important part. I was always told I did not have a health issue. I had a weight issue. And whether I was told it by society or doctors, really interestingly, I was never told it by my parents. Like that was just, I just give them so many props. Like that was just, we will buy you clothes and like whatever. And, once I wanted to diet, they supported me in going to diets.
So
But
who were you listening
um,
to if you weren't getting it from them?
Yeah, yeah. So I think like pivotal points for me. At age 8, I remember kind of shifting from being, I mean, Tess, I was such a cute kid. I was like a cross between Shirley Temple and Spanky from the Little Rascals. Like, I was like, I told everyone in the neighborhood what they should be doing it when they would. I mean, if somebody wanted to pick on me, they could have called me like bossy, like B word, whatever.
But were you thinking at
But
the time that you were a cute kid, or do you think that now looking back?
Oh, well, I think I just thought I was like awesome. Like I just went through the world like I am 100% awesome. And in second grade, a bully punched me and punched me in the belly. He pulled me out back and was like trying to get another kid to like kiss me. I mean, it was like very traumatic. Like I think in that regard. And I remember or I don't remember because I can like I'll have dreams where I remember him yelling at me or like I remember going to the teacher and me being like, am I okay? Like, am I not? And then I don't know what he said, but I remember he chose to hit me in the belly. Like it was like he didn't hit me in the face, he didn't trip me, he didn't spit on me, he hit me in the belly. And that was when I realized my belly was a weakness. And I was really strong. Like I'm physically strong. I'm strong in school. I felt like I was strong in my family, like all of these pieces. So when that like made me weak, it was like all of a sudden I was like, oh, I got to get rid of this belly because it's a weakness. And
It's a
then
very vulnerable
society
place
started to
to
tell me
touch
it was a
someone,
weakness.
to punch
Yeah.
someone. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think then society started, so like society kind of shows you, and then like another kid makes fun of you, or I'm like aware that like in my bathing suit or my ballet outfit, like I have a belly and the other girls don't. And again, I'm just big, like I'm broad, I'm big. And so like I felt bigger, like, anyway. But I would say that, and then there around the time that like I was definitely not wanting to like date like in high school. I mean, I grew up with brothers and I kind of like thought boys were cute, but I think to be rejected for and I felt like I just decided that that rejection was my belly and as a result my appearance. Now, to be clear, somebody might not want to have dated me for my personality or like for anything else, but like I just decided, it was my belly. And that led to a lot of dieting in high school. And then once I went to college, really disordered behavior. And even in high school, drinking alcohol, I didn't feel like I fit in, like sort of could be like, unless I was like fun and like, I don't care about my body, and so I kind of like used it to dissociate. In college, that was pretty profound. I remember like a guy at a fraternity party, like pointing to my friends and their jeans and being like look at their hip bones, and like literally pushing into my stomach. I swear to God, it was like the same kid from 8th grade, and being like, like, do you even have hip bones? Like you're and here I am, like also like these were not like, I mean, they were cool or people liked them, but also I thought these guys sucked. Like I was not trying to be their friend, but I couldn't understand why somebody would just reject me for that. And I think rejection became so profound that I felt willing to do anything. So I really tried anything.
And so when you say you tried everything,
yeah, everything.
dieting,
Yeah.
binge eating,
Yeah.
not eating.
I mean, if anyone, like all of the above, like laxatives, I tried only eating frozen yogurt. We did that, was really popular in college. I tried not eating, playing lacrosse, went out to the lacrosse field. Like there are pivotal moments where adults intervened, thankfully, or older students, and said, like my coach didn't let me come back to practice until somebody sat with me and I ate 3 meals a day for 3 days, so like those kinds of things, thankfully. But I had a friend who was we ate a whole container of icing. I had another friend who like, we ate all the Oreos. I didn't know they were puking them up. Like, I just was like, I'm right here with you, so I'm like, getting worse. And so I tried. And then what was really interesting was my eyes were really open to health. And so I had somebody who introduced me to Michio Kushi and the macrobiotic work. So I became a macrobiotic vegan. I gave up alcohol. I like started doing yoga, and like instead of doing yoga once a day, I did yoga twice a day. I ran the New York City Marathon.
You were living in extremes.
I was like, I am going to try everything. And I famously, we don't have to go into it, but I met a healer hanging upside down in yoga class, and she's like, diagnosed me, like, I don't waved a wand and was like, you've got a worm, and killed the worm by drinking goat's milk. And I even tried 7 days of goat's milk only. And you know what? It did work. It flattened my belly for 7 days. But the problem was day 9, day 10, day 11.
Bet it made you really sick.
Yeah, and like expensive, not very social, a lot of factors in that one.
God, so tell me about the moment when you were sitting in that bar restaurant and met that gastroenterologist and gut health became a focus for you.
Yeah, it was really interesting. All along the way, again, like I was told I was healthy. And so I had grown up on antibiotics and that, like a ton, and then bad periods, and then birth control, and then a little bit of skin issues, and then Accutane. And so, all of these different things, in hindsight, I'm like, I mean, it should have been on everybody's radar. And, it was a different time then. But what was really interesting to me was I had gone to a lot of doctors, and doctors didn't have a tool. They didn't know what to do with me, and they didn't know how to help me. So, the fact that I went to find others made sense. So when at the end of like my goat's milk cleanse was really a rock bottom, and it really, like, I remember being in the bar. So after like it didn't work, I end up in a bar, and I remember sitting there at the bar drinking with the guys, chanting "kill the worm," telling them my story and laughing at me. And somebody is like, "You are so funny." And I was like, you know what? I am. I'm going to be a stand-up comedian because I can be fat and I can be successful. I was like, I think I was meant to be this. Like, I just like had this like whole moment. I'm like, this is where I'm going. And this guy comes up to me and goes, excuse me, like he was over there eating a burger, and he's like, did you take antibiotics as a kid? And I was like, and I looked at him, as funny as ever, like practicing my stand-up, and I was like, That's the craziest pickup line I've ever heard. And yes, I was born in the 70s. I basically freebased them and chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. Everybody's laughing. And then I look at him and he's like, and he just gives me his card and he's like, look, your insurance will pay for it. I know what's going on for you. What was crazy was I actually kept his card. I'm surprised I didn't burn it or, torch it in the tequila. But in a moment of, I still had a little bit of hope. I was like, there's got to be something to this. And so I went and saw him. He never mentioned my weight. He asked me, got real curious, asked me a lot about decade on decade. He asked me a little bit about my parents, asked me about my food choices, all of these other things. And then he said to me, so it's not what you're eating or what you're not eating. He's like, it's that your body doesn't have what it needs to run better, specifically the antibiotics and subsequent medications. And quite honestly, all your like effed up eating has really like all of it. Your system doesn't have the resources. Your digestion is challenged. That's why there's bloating. That's why that's the issue going on in your belly, that literally your belly is a signal of. And it was like, it blew my mind so significantly that I left the world of advertising and public health education and all the stuff I was doing and I was like, I got to do this for everybody else.
So it wasn't, it has to be me moment.
100%. It has to be me that I sometimes wonder if it actually happened. Like I've dove down. I'm like, literally, I was like, did that guy really say it at the bar? And I've like gone through it and I'm like, well, my friends have told me, and I remember going to the gastroenterologist and they're like, you came home and you're like, guess what? And it really pivoted. And it became a moment where I now was in the driver's seat of my own, what I'll later call weight health, but certainly at that time period, I was like, I actually can help myself. Together with the right resources, with a partner, I can actually help myself get healthy. And it was the first time that I stopped feeling like a victim about my belly and my weight health on that part.
It's so empowering when you viscerally feel in your body, I have the power to affect how I feel. Yeah. So you then, for many, many, many years worked as a dietitian with companies, with private clients all over the United States. You've been on all these TV shows talking about the importance of gut health and the relationship between gut health and hormones, blood sugar and metabolism. When did you then develop the next level of your understanding of how you wanted to communicate this with people, from going from weight to gut health to weight health to this weight health ecosystem that you now call it?
Yeah. I think that the ecosystem part for me was early on. The ecosystem, as soon as I started exploring digestion, and as soon as I had my own experience of when I take care of my belly, my skin looks better. When I take care of my belly, my mood has changed. I was off birth control. I was off antidepressant, I don't think I'd use an antidepressant, but I was off of, different treatments, that I was trying to do in that part. But I think the weight one for me, in particular, 2004, 2005, I saw my first bariatric patient. And in that time period in the hospital, rather flippantly, the doctor said to me, I'm just blown. Like 3 days after surgery, this person's blood, is basically non-diabetic. Some people, the day after surgery, their blood sugar is normalized. They're telling me they're just not thinking about food anymore. And he's like, we've switched on for them their incretin hormones, or something. I'm using my vernacular from today. But I was like, incretin hormones, what? And by the way, I was a full-on geek in school, and I still am in terms of the science. When I went back to school to learn how the body works, I was like front row, extra credit. I want to learn about this. So the fact that I had not learned, spoiler alert, the majority of your doctors and the majority of medical society had not learned until even the last couple of years about incretin hormones. Incretin hormones are GLP-1 and GIP, and we only knew of them as they relate to glucagon and insulin, two other hormones, and your blood sugar. But it's funny, it turns out that two of those, along with two others, PYY, CCK, along with others, GLP-2 and others that, don't need to be mentioned, they all work together. They're all your weight health hormones, and they're made and deployed in the lining of your digestive tract. I mean, there was no, when I learned that, when I went at, there was no Google in 2004, but when I was like, what are we doing with it? Because I just thought we were shrinking the stomach.
It's like the light bulb moment. It's like, wait a second, this is how the body works? So this is what we call the switch.
Yes. That's what we call the
Okay.
switch. And I think two things were happening in 2005. My light bulb was going off like that. And I'm like, oh, holy moly. I already know how to fix people's digestion, not fix, how to optimize their digestion. And as a result, do all of this. And at the same time, elsewhere in the universe or on planet Earth, in labs, pharmaceutical company and really even the researchers were like, oh, a Gila monster actually has a peptide hormone in its venom that's just like our GLP-1. And this is so interesting. Do you know that a Gila monster doesn't get hungry for 30 days? Its design was to make sure that if food wasn't available or if like anything, the heat of the desert or, predators or anything was too risky, it can just sit there and gain nutrients from its tush. Wish we had that part of it. Anyway, but that was happening. And so like they went down the path. And so in 2005, we had liraglutide. Like we had the early version of this, of a GLP-1 agonist. And an agonist, for listeners, I like to get very lexicon focused. An agonist means that it's working with your body. It's doing what your body normally does. An antagonist would be coming, and think of an antagonist like a statin or a proton pump inhibitor where they stop things. They stop cholesterol formation or interfere with it, or they stop stomach acid or interfere with its production. Here, an agonist is saying, we want to come in and make it your receptors. We want them to get the GLP-1 and work the way they're supposed to work. So it was this whole, like, it was revolutionary. And I was like, wait, if I can get the weight health hormones I didn't call them weight health hormones, if I can get those incretin hormones to work, imagine, like, I think I understand why doing it the way that I'm doing it is actually working. Pieces to the puzzle came after that, but I think that's really important to understand. This is not new. This is new to the public and to to sort of obesity specialists in the world, anyone who has been looking for a medication as a side of this, but we do this in our own body on that part. What is new and what is so important is understanding that these hormones, GLP-1, GIP, PYY, CCK, I call them your switch, they switch on other hormones, insulin and glucagon, leptin and ghrelin.
Let's talk about what some of these hormones are. So let's to make sure to use the lexicon.
I don't want to lose people.
That we are absolutely on track together. So let's talk about, because 1 in 10 Americans has tried a GLP-1 medication at this point, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are familiar with the term GLP-1. Let's talk about what GLP-1 actually is.
Great. So these are peptide hormones. So that's important. And when I'm talking about this, I want to be clear. I'm comfortable talking about liraglutide, semaglutide, and tirzepatide. All of the new medications, starting with retatrutide and the others that are coming out, those are not necessarily falling into they're falling into a different category. So I want to be clear. Peptide hormones means that they're made from amino acids. So they're a chain of amino acids, and those are assembled in a certain way. And when that hormone, so a hormone is a messenger, is a signaler. So what happens is it exists in a cell. When it gets signals, it's told to go to work. And then when it goes to work, it may tell other things to go to work. And those other things could be hormones or neurotransmitters or functions, could occur. So an example would be estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid hormone, insulin hormone. However, among all of those, only insulin is also from a peptide standpoint, right? So the other ones are made from fats. They're steroid hormones, and that distinction, it can be helpful. So when you hear peptide hormone, a light bulb should go off. We need protein. We do need protein because proteins are broken down into or made up of amino acids, and then these amino acids become what the body assembles into that hormone. So in a body that doesn't have enough amino acids to do all the things it's supposed to do, that could be one reason why maybe you're not making enough, of this particular hormone. So this hormone, GLP-1, and similar to its partner GIP, it helps to impact. It tells insulin to go to work. So meaning when it gets signals from the brain or from the taste buds, we can talk about that, from your tongue, when it thinks it's getting food, when it thinks it's going to get that, or when it's in receipt of it, it's going to send messages down the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is going to go in right by the gut. It's going to go in, it's going to say, or the gut itself is going to release. And in there's an L cell, and that cell is going to say, I'm going to release GLP-1. Now, here's what's really important. I'm going to release GLP-1 and it's going to go maybe in the bloodstream, maybe via the brain, but it is only going to stay on for 2 to 5 minutes. So it's got a lot of work to do really quickly. That's why I call it a switch. It's very much designed like a motion detector. And in pre-industrialization, in societies where there were like clear pathways, where it was really easy, or there wasn't like a stampede going on in front of the motion detector, it was easier. 2 to 5 minutes might have been enough time for the hormone to get where it's supposed to go, right? We can appreciate that today, or at least I appreciate that there may be a need for us to give the body more support because 2 to 5 minutes is not enough for it to do everything, or if the highway's real crowded, it might not get through, et cetera.
Okay, so
When it gets where it's supposed to
GLP-1
go,
is a
yeah,
hormone that is produced in the
yeah,
body, and a lot of
yeah,
it's produced in the gut, right? And
mm-hmm,
so when the switch goes on, it speaks to leptin and ghrelin, two other hormones.
mm-hmm,
Leptin is your
mm-hmm,
satiety hormone and ghrelin is your hunger hormone, right? So it can control
right,
and communicate with your hunger and satiety cues.
yeah,
And then GLP-1 also speaks to insulin, another hormone, to regulate
yeah,
your blood sugar. Is that a good
right.
layperson's version of it?
And And hold on, Tess, hold the phone. And we now know that thanks to these drugs are amazing because they have so quickly the research on them, because everybody's so excited about, and when you are researching a drug, there's a lot of money there. We now know all of these things that that GLP-1 does. There are receptor sites in the endothelial, so in the tissue in our blood vessels. So it's involved with plaque formation and the integrity of our blood vessels. There are GLP-1 receptor sites on our heart muscle. GLP is involved, and GIP, its partner, is also involved in bone formation and in bone breakdown and bone building. GLP-1 is involved with what kind of fat mass what type of fat we make. GLP-1 is also involved from a muscle standpoint. I mean, it's fascinating to be looking at all the different things. And that's just the hormone side. There's a neurotransmitter, GLP-1 receptor sites on our taste
Yeah, let's
buds.
talk about that.
So
Let's talk about that, because that's something
yeah,
that most people are not talking about, that there are receptors in our
right.
taste buds. So why is that important
Yes.
for us to understand?
Yeah, because when we are doing things that are messing with our taste buds, so our oral microbiome, so the health of your oral microbiome really matters. Like if you are someone where you notice you have like maybe a thicker coating on your tongue, we could go to Chinese medicine and
Mm.
look at, how they evaluate the tongue. When we look at things like alcohol, when we look at things that are in our mouthwash and our
Yeah,
toothpaste that may be
alcohol.
changing, when we look at artificial sweeteners, they've been shown to change oral microbiome as well. So medications, of course. So it's really important for, if we change the acid alkaline balance, or if we have a series of food choices and we don't nurture all of those different taste buds. And the one taste bud that's really well associated because of how it stimulates GLP-1 is the bitter taste bud, bitter
Yes.
taste receptor. And they're different in the mouth and in the gut in terms of not everything that in our mouth that we taste as bitter is going to be the same as activating the bitter receptors in the gut. So, not like sometimes people just list out a bunch of bitter foods, which by the way are great for us, like all sorts of benefits, but it may not be the same for sort of stimulating our natural production, in the mouth versus in the gut. But yeah, it's really important. So the ecosystem. Take care of your oral health.
Yes.
Like, we're learning, like when we get dental work done, when Invisalign, I wore Invisalign for a year, and I think that I love what it did to my teeth, so I'm grateful on that part. But I actually think it was very disturbing for my overall microbiome, and I did a lot of repair after that. And that was at a time period where I also had hormones departing for life reasons and other things, and I think it was this perfect kind of storm with weight health, on that piece.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of clues, a lot of
Wow.
places.
Okay. So our switch, our natural body
Hmm.
function, where
Yeah, our
these
operations. Hmm.
peptide hormones get activated, but they're working like
Hmm.
motion detectors, like you say, and they only
Yeah,
stay on for about 2 to 5 minutes. Okay.
right.
So then when we go over to the shot, as opposed to the
Yeah,
switch, and we are taking in GLP-1 and other hormones that are
yeah,
produced in a lab, and they're not
yeah,
naturally produced in the body. How is that different than our natural
great.
switch?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of attention, and I don't think most people get it right. So I want to be clear on this. Yes, they are a hormone replacement therapy. So I want to start there.
Okay,
So we
this is
replace hormones
let's
all the time.
really take that
Huge.
in, because
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
something again that I think most people do not understand, that when you take a
right.
GLP-1 medication, you are putting
Yeah.
hormones into your body. Yeah.
That's right. Now you're putting peptide hormone, not steroid hormone, but yes, you're putting a hormone into your body. So, number one, that can be super advantageous if your own is suboptimally performing or functioning for any reason, just like we would look at insulin or we would look at testosterone or anything else. But insulin, testosterone, et cetera, are bioidentical. That means that like they're made exactly like ours. Yes, they're synthetic, but they're made exactly like ours. These are called biosimilar. That's an important distinction because anything that's similar has a dissimilarity. So we've gone through what's similar. The body receives it and it's like, oh, you look like an egg and you come into my body and you are an egg. But the difference is if I took an egg and I broke it apart into the amino acids and I went into your muscle and I was like, okay, and I went to your brain and delivered the choline and did everything else like that, and you didn't have to digest the egg, break it down and have it do all of that. And then also if I gave you 40 eggs at one time instead of one egg. So let's talk about what's dissimilar. So the dissimilarity is number one, it stays on for the first medication stayed on for 24 hours. These versions of medication stay on 24 hours a day for about 7 days on that part, 5 to 7, in terms of depending on dose and depending on the person. So in that regard, in something that was designed to stay on 2 to 5 minutes is now on all the time.
Whoa, so you
That's
don't get the rest
amazing.
and digest signal. Okay, it's time
Yeah,
to turn
yeah,
off now. We're going to rest and
yes.
digest. We're not going to keep running. We're not going to keep activating.
Treadmill, you are on the treadmill.
Wow.
You're on the treadmill. This is why dose and also
Wow.
understanding who somebody is and what's going on with their body up front is really important.
Wow.
Because what I see is, okay, if you were like great, if your heart rate variability, which is a good indicator of how your body is in that rest and digest, that time off time period, or if just like from all you wake up, what you sleep well, you feel rested, like all other signs, if that was all awesome, which I think is like 2% of the population ever, or people at specific times, in their lives. If that was awesome, then this medication has the potential to create issues there. If it's not awesome, it's going to exacerbate any of the underlying issues. And here's the kicker.
Wow, that's an
Everyone
important
is
point.
calling it everyone's calling it fatigue as a side effect. Like it's like one of the big, Tess, maybe I will just go be a stand-up comedian because I like die laughing. I was like, who are you? Like you're a medical practitioner and you're claiming that, oh, my patients are so fatigued. I've had people who've had to come off of it. Yes, they are. But if this is the direct effect, this is not a side effect. This is the medication working exactly as it should. And if somebody is experiencing a degree of fatigue, you like alarm bells should be going off. You have to come back and say, let's adjust the dose, or let's work on the system around your recovery. Maybe we need more magnesium. Maybe we need, looking at I like herbatonin. I like to use the plant-based melatonin. Maybe we need to come in and have you have a different sleep routine. Maybe you aren't eating enough. Like I'm not going to say it's never that you're not eating enough or eating the right amount. Maybe you're so fatigued that now you're taking in too much caffeine. Like there are so many things for us to unpack that also in my very I get huge biased opinion here, this does not belong in the wheelhouse of a doctor because everything that I just said is not something that the majority of doctors dive into and personalize with their patients. This is what a dietitian does or should be doing, in collaboration, and saying like, hey, let's look at what your body is telling us and then let's look at that. So that's just one issue from a dissimilarity. The second issue is we're delaying gastric emptying. When you delay gastric emptying, it means that it is harder for nutrients to get where they're supposed to go because they take longer to get into the absorption phase. And, yes, they may get broken down, they may not, depends on your digestive system. And then in that time period, it's not because somebody said, like somebody on Instagram the other day was like, your food sticks around for 2 weeks. That's not the situation in the majority of
Yeah.
instances, but the situation is suboptimal digestion. And we're also giving recommendations to hit them with more protein. So they're increasing their protein, which requires a lot of digestion. So what I typically see is I see inflammation. I see a lot of reflux, a lot of, acid reflux or just general reflux. I see coughing, like everybody's like, oh, Ozempic cough. And I was like, yeah, you know what that's a sign of? Suboptimal digestion and dehydration. We can get into that in a minute. The third one I think is super important also. When you take a system that is designed to go on and off for about 2 to 5 minutes on repeat, right, several times in the day and, all of those pieces.
I think the important phrase for me is when it is needed, when it is required.
Right. When it's required, or like on that part. And then what it's going to do is when it goes, you totally are circumventing it. It's going directly to the receptor sites. And again, this is the brilliance of the medication. Like, this is why it works. This is awesome. I actually think this medication is so much better than many other medications that were not better for people, that were like negatively impacting the body and not getting the weight health results. So like, I think there's a lot of advantage to it. But when you're doing this and we're in those receptor sites on that, you're telling an entire part of the body's ecosystem that it doesn't have to work. That's like, it's suppressed, it's turned off.
Yeah.
So here's what's happening. We see GLP-1 and GIP getting satisfied and all of these different receptors, and everybody's so excited about those receptors. But what's happening in the L cells where your body's own GLP-1 is there, and part of the whole system is that it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be deploying what it has in there. And I would imagine with PYY and CCK, which work, there are other weight health hormones there, that if the other ones are being suppressed, that their function is also being suppressed. So one of the things, the easiest answer in the world, if anybody out there is like, oh my God, you have to stay on this forever, and they think they're smart saying that, that's like a light bulb moment, or that's even a critique of the medication, please just go back to them and be like, it's the dumbest statement that you ever said. Here's the point. If you go on something and it hits receptor sites somewhere in your body and it deactivates your own or suppresses your own, I don't want to say deactivate, it suppresses your own. If you come off of it, and especially if you come off of it abruptly and you haven't changed anything else in your body, even if you've just lost weight, maybe fat, maybe muscle, of course you have to stay on it. Like, that's just like, of course, that's dumb. Like, that's a dumb critique of the medication. If you want to come off of it, if you determine that for a period of time you're going to come off of it, or we're going to lower the dose, or we're going to wean, or you've achieved weight health, or for some reason you have to, you're now pregnant, or you have a cancer diagnosis, a treatment, any of these other things, we have to recognize that while you were on the medication, your own was not getting activated. So we have to engage a plan to restart your own hormones, and they will never work the way your body worked on, the way it worked on Ozempic or on, one of these. Never be the same, but we have to restart your own. Otherwise, the consequence is that, you will just regain all of your weight, or you will have blood sugar issues.
So is this is an accurate summary of what you just explained, that when we take a GLP-1 medication, it's like putting 20 eggs in your body at once as opposed to one egg. Is right? Mm. And so
to go to all those receptor sites.
We're taking these huge amounts, of a synthetic version of a hormone that we produce. Instead of it staying on for 2 to 5 minutes, it stays on 24/7, 7 days a week. We don't rest and digest. It suppresses our body's innate ability to produce these hormones naturally.
It may be produced, or certainly there's no need for them. So we don't know, is the body still producing them and then it's just like sticking around there, or is the body stop producing it? I would infer the body stops producing. And there was early research with liraglutide, but I want to just touch on that point. But yes, like in some capacity, if a receptor site is satisfied, you're not calling out for it. If you've got $100 in the $100 spot, nobody's calling out for $100 to put in that spot.
So we've talked about, look, it's all over the news all day, every day about the negative side effects of these medications, or the negative effects of these medications. So what are some of the real benefits of taking a medication like this? Let's talk about this.
Yeah, I love pros and consideration. And so I'm going to land on the pros
really like
here.
the term consideration, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah.
pros and cons. I think it's it's a really non-judgmental way of framing the conversation. So thank you for that, because I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
What are some of the benefits that we are seeing from people being
Yeah.
on these medications?
And I will acknowledge there are lots of GLP-1 cons, like anybody selling you Nature's Ozempic as a supplement, or a company that's selling you the product and and we don't know what's in it, or somebody selling it. I think it's a con to get it and not get, somebody who can help you optimize or not use my book or something. So there are some cons, but when we actually talk about the medications, pros and considerations. So a consideration that's a pro that's amazing. There are so many of us, because our blood sugar impacts so much of the ecosystem. It has to do with cognitive health, dementia, and sort of that decline that's in there. It has to do with our energy. It has to do with our mood. It's impacted by shifting hormones. And you and I both know that, like, there's a time period in your life as a woman. It could be, it can come at any point in time, but it could be 10 years where your hormones look like an EKG machine. They don't just drop out like a ski slope. They're like, I'm going to dance around for a while, and that has crazy impact on your blood sugar. And I have a lot of people who have been trying everything under the sun to address prediabetes with the desire to not be diabetic.
Yeah, which is a
And this
huge
is
consideration in
massive.
perimenopausal,
Yes.
menopausal, and postmenopausal
Yes,
women as estrogen,
absolutely.
progesterone, DHA declines,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes. And we have so many other people who are using a hemoglobin A1C, a 90-day average, and they're not even seeing that their blood sugar looks dismal because their hemoglobin A1C is, it's an EKG machine within range, but it's still like it's going up and down, but too much in that part.
When you
And
get
so
an
we
average
can do
blood
better.
panel and you get your
Yeah.
A1C result, it shows you an average of your blood sugar over 90 days, but it
Right.
doesn't show you what is affecting your blood sugar.
Right. 2 a.m. and 2
Yes.
p.m., right? On that part, or how am I responding to my stress or these? So that's, I think continuous glucose monitoring is great. And, there are some other ways for us to look at it. So when I look at from an aging, when people ask me, is this like a longevity drug? And I was like, absolutely, there's potential. It's hard when it's like a drug because it's a hormone replacement therapy, but optimizing GLP-1 I like to say your weight health hormones. I don't want to just pick that one, is so important so if this helps someone in that space, absolutely. The other side of it is we also know that when we are carrying excess fat, and this can be excess visceral fat, and this can be excess all over body fat, that fat is not just heavy. Fat is not just a belly that I want to get rid of. Fat is a sign. When the body is depositing it where it doesn't belong, or is depositing it in excess, creating fat in excess, it is a sign. There are toxins that are trapped in there. It's a sign of dysfunction, of suboptimal function. And once you have those fat cells, they're active. They're actively running chaos throughout the ecosystem in that part. So when we can shrink fat cells at an appropriate pace, and one of the reasons I talk about appropriate pacing is also when we shrink fat cells, we're releasing toxins. And I have a lot of people who are shrinking fat cells very fast. They aren't optimizing their detoxification, their digestion, and they're feeling more sick. Like they're actually like experiencing and getting sick, and these sorts of things. So when we shrink fat cells, we really have to look at that and understand that part. So this as an agent to do that, I think, is really meaningful. And is it related to calories? Yes, because it may be helping. It might be telling that leptin and ghrelin to go to work where he previously wasn't getting that messaging. One of the other pros about this is where that happens in the brain is a space I think we're not undermining, we're oversimplifying and probably as it relates to weight bias, when we call it food noise. So the noise that has been in my brain for the better part, and certainly as a kid, when people told me to stop eating when I felt full, I was like, cool. I just went on and ate because I never felt full. And I was like, and yes, some of the food today is designed so that we don't feel full, right? But even eating like good quality food, it took like, I did not connect to that feeling full. Well, the other side of it is because I started to diet and because I associated what I ate with my belly, anytime food was around, I was having a conversation in my brain. That conversation would go of like, well, am I going to be a good or am I going to not be good? And how much am I going to eat? How much is she eating? Should I have this? Should I not? And what ended up happening was I wasn't present with friends. I wasn't present in work meetings. I wasn't present. And this is I'm sharing about myself, but this is everyone, regardless of your size. They actually did a research study, put donuts in the center of the table, and had people of different sizes and different health issues around the table. And it was not the biggest person at the table that either ate the donut or was distracted by the food. It was, interestingly, people of all different sizes who were having conversations with themselves about whether or not they would eat the donut, on that part. So when we think about that distraction in our life and we look at the pros of having a less distracted brain as it relates to food conversations, I think that's really, really valuable. And some of them, as somebody who so many of those conversations really contributed to very unhealthy behaviors, I know that extends to, our overall health, both mentally and physically. So there are a lot, and then the pros in terms of heart health, et cetera. I think what we're going to see is we're in such bad shape as a society. 9 in 10 Americans in 2019, they did a study, so pre-COVID, 9 in 10 did not meet the criteria for metabolic health of the people that they had looked at. And I thought those criteria weren't strict enough, right?
I mean, to know that over 90% of people are
Yes.
metabolically unhealthy
Yeah,
is such an alarming statistic, just like the 1 in 4
Right.
people have fatty liver disease, and now it's going to be 1 in 3.
Right.
I mean, these statistics are truly disturbing. So just to summarize, the benefits of taking a GLP-1 medication is that it can help you lose weight and fat / toxins, like you said, because it's trapped in there. It can help you calm the food noise. It can help you regulate your blood sugar, help you optimize your heart health. But if you don't change the way that you eat and are not optimizing your digestion, your hydration, and some of these other things, you talked about nutrients not getting where they need to be because of slowing down gastric emptying, which happens when we're on these medications and we're on, the switch is on 24/7 and doesn't go into the rest and digest phase. So we've talked about the natural switch in our body. We've talked about the GLP-1 shot. I know there's other peptide hormones, but we'll just do that because that's what the average person is calling them. Let's talk about your best shot, which is what your book is about. So we've talked about that. What do we need to know about giving ourselves the best shot? So let's talk about the foundation of your book, which is better gut health and optimizing digestion and hydration. Because I think that it happens in 2 parts, and you alluded to that before, that we'll get to the hydration piece and why this is so incredibly important. So let's start with these foundations, and then we'll go from there, because the book just really lays it out in this really sort of methodical way.
Yeah, I use the analogy of a pizza. It came from one of my patients, and I was like, all right, the crust, like everyone,
build your pizza is like building your better health plan. It's a great analogy. Yeah, so let's make pizza.
Yeah, and so I want to come back to something you said again at the start of that statement of like, so if you're not eating right, so I want to bring us back to my experience with the doctor, and he said it's not what you're eating or what you're not eating. I was a macrobiotic vegan, so the only thing that I was eating that wasn't better for me is it turns out I'm actually allergic to barley, thus my the ending of my relationship with beer. But like that was like literally, and I maybe didn't do so well with soy products, right? But it was not what I was eating, and I want to double click on that for one weight bias before we get to the crust. But I'm coming into the crust for this. There is so much stigma in our weight society, in a society that looks at weight and it segregates it from health, and talking about people especially who appear to be carrying excess fat, where those people must be people who just eat really crappy. They must either eat all the time, or they eat crappy food, or they don't know what to eat for their body. And there might be points in their life, a la a goat's milk cleanse, out of desperation where they're not eating, although one could argue goat's milk being the perfect food, protein, carbohydrates, and, it's alkaline forming and healthy fats. Anyway, when we look at that and we come in, and so one of the things I want us to recognize, this book does not start with eat this, not that, and it never delivers that. Because what's really interesting is it's about, if your body is an operating system, you have to be able to resource that optimally if you want it to run optimally. So we want optimal health. We want to be as healthy as we can be for as long as we're gifted here. And in that regard, that is, our body is literally just an operating system, and it needs optimal amounts of resources. Why is that important? And this is the lead into the crust. It's important because when the body has suboptimal amounts, it doesn't have enough of the protein, or it doesn't have enough magnesium, it has its own prioritization schedule, and you do not get to pivot and tell it where you are going to prioritize. So I couldn't say, take the magnesium for goodness sake and help me have a bowel movement. Like my gut is so slow, or I feel backed up. It's like, nope, the little bit of magnesium you're giving it, I'm going to make sure your heart, your heart pumps effectively, right? Like the calcium tenses it, and the magnesium relaxes it. And so what we have right now is we have a society that is suboptimally resourcing our body. But here's the kicker. We've also been told, and this is all in my chapter on shit to unlearn, we've also been told that we give credit for, you ate kale? Oh my gosh, that's such a healthy food. Or did you know chia seeds? They're so healthy for you. Salmon, it's so healthy for you. No, nothing is healthy for you until it gets to where it is needed to be in a form that's used, and here's why we have the crust, and the body can use it. So all of that is digestion. Your body, you don't high five yourself for eating the kale. High five yourself when the kale, the antioxidants, all of what's in it gets where it's supposed to go. That's the job of your digestion. Your digestion is about breaking it down, moving it along, helping what needs to go where it should go be absorbed and disseminated there, and then eliminating what doesn't belong there. And I think for too long.
No, so basically what you're saying is you are what you eat is not technically accurate. You're literally what you digest
it's shit
and
to
absorb.
Unlearn.
So if you are not absorbing the nutrients from the food because your digestion is not optimized, then it's the nutrients aren't getting where they need to be. We're not saying
and your genetics could
that
be
you
a
can
factor,
be healthy by not eating
nutrients.
vegetables and just eating pizza and takeaway food.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So my point was before that you have to eat some vegetables and quality foods. You say in your book, be a qualitarian. I love that term.
Yes.
Eating quality foods and then optimizing your digestion so that you can make use of the quality foods that you're eating.
Right. The quality foods in the right quantity, with nutrient balance, and in a better timing. So 4 pillars of better nutrition and better lifestyle. Those are your
and
sauce
I think
and
the
cheese,
timing piece is the thing that a lot of people miss, is that we have to be eating regularly throughout the day. And so we actually do want hunger and satiety cues that are appropriate for what our body needs to run better. And that is
one of the considerations I'm seeing with GLP-1 agonists is I have a lot of people who are like, it's so great for me from an intermittent fasting. I'm not even hungry until like 2 or 3. And I'm like,
just too big of a window.
Like like the whole morning, and maybe they're having coffee, or maybe they're having a little bit of, of something, and then not eating, and then they're backloading because now they're like, oh, I've got to get in 100 grams of protein. You know how your body, the way that your body feels when you give it 100 grams of protein at like 6 o'clock at night is like the middle finger that I would give my boss if I got an email with like a week's worth of work to do at 5 o'clock, and I'm supposed to get on the 5:15 train.
We can't
it's
absorb and assimilate that much protein in one sitting. Oh.
And like, maybe you're kind of active at that time period, but hopefully you're kind of winding down, whatever. And it's like, so in that space, it's like timing is so important. And I think what has also happened, just like, when we used to say like eat, people would say like, oh, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. We're such selective listeners. We all heard fruits because fruits are sweet and we like to eat sweet, and then they're like, and Weight Watchers told us it didn't count. Remember, it wasn't like points. I don't know if you ever did Weight Watchers, but like for me, it was like free food. Like I literally, my friend was a fruitarian, and I'm like, I'm down with this. Oh my God.
I know. So many people are eating way too much
like
fruit.
my gosh. It was like, well, and too much at one time. And again,
Yeah.
This is the obesity crisis or the weight or like weight health issues are not because of fruit, but what we have selective listening. And when we hear things like, as an example with intermittent fasting, we hear like, well, an 8 or a 6 or a 10-hour window. And then everybody's like, cool, I didn't want to eat breakfast
Oh,
anyway. I'm
yeah.
great with a coffee, whatever. And so they start at noon and they're like, I can eat until midnight. And you're like, or, till 10. And I was like, take that same window and move it over to 8 a.m. I'll tell you a funny story. We have a dear friend in common, Lara, and she's a fabulous
She's been on the
nutritionist.
podcast, Lara Zachariah.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's amazing. One of our dear friends and amazing. So as I was basically imploding, but externally looking like I was exploding, and I started to give up, I had given up alcohol. I started doing my endurance event training. I'm trying to, I'm leaning into all this stuff that's going on with my hormones. And I'm like wearing my continuous glucose monitor. It's like, you have like dawn effect, meaning that my blood sugar was suddenly like high in the morning. And I'm literally I have incredible genetics. I just want to be clear. Yes, I've taken care of myself, but I also have incredible genetics. So I've never seen, until this time, I'd never seen cholesterol numbers above like 60 and 80. I'd never like naturally, I'd never seen my blood sugar out of range, like, unless I, sat down and like, went to town on chips or ice cream. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And I read Mindy Peltz's Fast Like a Girl. And so I was just doubling and tripling down on fasting. By the way, nobody wanted to be around me. That started with not drinking alcohol. But then I was like, and then I was having coffee, me, and my caffeine. I was having coffee on an empty stomach because I could do that from fasting and I wasn't. And I was such a hot mess. My cortisol, I was by the end of the day,
cortisol and stress hormones would have been
I was a
through the
mess.
roof.
And she just said to me one day, like, just like nicely, she's like, I think you need to eat. Like, literally.
So hear her saying that.
You could totally see it, right? Like, Ash, I think you need to eat. And I was like, I'm texting with her and I was like, what are you talking about? I don't need to be eating. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I ate in the morning and it was like, together at last.
Like, many
it
of
was
the
like
world's
a symphony.
problems can be solved if we just eat something.
I was like, I'm like, I'm not going to go for a 2-hour hike on just coffee alone. It was crazy.
Yeah,
like just
many people are doing
so I
fasted
also,
workouts.
I get it. And I hear everybody out there. And so I share this, not to say like, I think I'm really good at my job and like life lessons, but for me, I didn't realize what a trigger it was to I was unhappy in my life. So I had to make some choices, but also my hormones were exiting or they were doing their crazy dance and all of this. And so as a professional with all the tools in the toolkit, I was sitting there and I'm going, okay, something's right. So we glom onto things. And I think if you're somebody who has tried intermittent fasting because it's the thing to lose weight, it is not the thing for weight health. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a very specific caloric window and an active window. So when you're having calories, being active so that you can encourage recovery in the opposite.
And I think a really important point too is that it's just one strategy. Just like taking a GLP-1 medication, if you choose to do that, is one tool.
Yes.
And we have to have a whole box of tools. We have to have a tool kit and we have to put certain strategies together in the appropriate configuration, for want of a better term, to make our unique body run better in consultation with a practitioner who's going to help you develop a personalized plan. So let's build our pizza, to use your analogy in the book, right? So the crust, let's lay a foundation of
digestion and hydration.
Let's talk about how we can do that. And there's some amazing tips in the book. Let's just get a broad strokes overview because you do lay it out very methodically in the book. So it's very easy to follow and implement.
Yeah. And it starts with assessment. So the cornerstone of all of this is decoding your body signal. Like, so instead of saying like, I hate my belly, being like, what's it telling me? Or instead of saying it's so weird that my skin is breaking out, what's that telling me?
So they're just signals that your body is out of balance.
They're just signals. They're signals, changes in mouth odor or body odor, changes in poop, like all of these things are so important.
Or said differently, a way of your body crying out. Please look at this. Please look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have any other way. When we're babies, that like we're so tied into that. We're looking at everything about the baby, and then we're on that part we need to continue that. And so from there, through your assessment, I do it kind of as an easy quiz. Like, yes, I have you look at your poop. Yes, I have you smell yourself or inquire of others who are smelling you. And yes, I mean, there we go. Like, and I do ask you questions like so that we can see, are things going in the wrong direction? Do you have reflux? Is there a motility issue? And we can really hone in on, if it's motility, I tend to start with motility first. But motility, absorption, and breakdown
Define motility
are
for
going to
somebody
be
that's
really
going,
key.
I don't understand exactly what you mean by that.
Thanks. Yeah. So our digestion is a muscle that goes from our mouth out the rectum, out through the anus on that part, and that whole muscle all along the way. Yes, it uses gravity, which is one of the reasons it's important for us to stand up, but it also uses movement, and that movement is a muscle contracting and relaxing. And muscle contraction and relaxing, and in particular the relaxation part, is one of the foundational roles of magnesium. The contracting is more calcium on that part. So
magnesium
motility,
helps us relax. So magnesium helps
relax.
to push energy out of the cells. Calcium keeps it in, and
Right.
they work in concert with each other to regulate healthy stress responses. So,
yes.
The motility is the way that the muscular contractions and how things move through the body. So when we've got slow motility, that would be constipation. That would be congestion.
Right.
When
bloating maybe.
Okay. When it's the motility is too fast, that would be diarrhea. Right? Is that a good way of explaining it?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yep. That things are moving through too quickly on that part. And I want to come back to the magnesium statement, because everybody's like, oh, slow motility, magnesium. Well, motility is movement. So one of the reasons I focus so much on in the cheese, actually, so we'll get there,
but
the it's really, which is our lifestyle, is another place that we've gone really poorly on our recommendations around activity. We are not meant to do 30 minutes of exercise in the day and the rest of the time be sedentary. So even on a day like today, I'm standing, so that's great on that part. But I went for a walk, and when I wake up in the morning, I do a little bit of like bringing my knees to my chest and, doing other stuff, because I know about myself that I have slow motility. Then I know certain times in the month I hit slow motility. If I'm slower, like on a plane, I'm going to have slower. If I'm in a car.
And you've got those great suggestions in the book about just twisting the middle of your body, where the small, where the intestines are coiled up like the length of a football field, and they have to be moving and be twisting, and you can just be stretching, and there's all kinds of ways that you can just keep that muscle moving.
Yes. Yeah. And you had Lauren Roxburgh on your podcast,
she was great.
Low rocks and like
rebounding, foam rolling, twisting, stretching, yoga poses.
Yeah. So getting into there, and so we do need to address, and then one of the main reasons to address motility is that if we start to try to work on breaking down or absorption, if stuff isn't getting where it's supposed to go, that's not going to be. So I usually start with motility.
So that's why the motility thing is, it helps it get where it's supposed to go.
That's
a great way of explaining it.
Yeah. So from a pacing standpoint, so we have breakdown and absorption, and breakdown can be, maybe I'm chewing, maybe I'm not chewing enough. So double your chewing time.
So many people are not chewing their food properly, and digestion begins in the mouth with chewing.
Yeah. Totally. And I think, and it also is when everything is in the mouth, especially if it's delicious to us, it's sending the signals for our weight health hormones. So it's waking them up and letting them know.
Let me ask you about that, because you talk about it's got to be delicious, and you've got the is it delicious test in your book. We talked about the receptors. We talked about the production and why. Why is something being delicious and feeling satisfied and happy about the food that you're eating so key to this?
Well, so it's twofold. One is those are our weight health hormones. So that's the job.
Yeah.
So they get told to go to work.
It engages the switch.
It engages them. Yeah.
Okay, the switch hormone.
So that's your switch optimization. Yeah. So why not? It's a little fake it till you make it. Like if you're eating a lot of stuff that isn't delicious, and you're trying to help your weight health hormones work, you're like, ooh, what if I just ate stuff that was more delicious? Now I get hit with all the time, okay, Ashley, but a Reese's cup is delicious to me, or ice cream or whatever. And I'm like, all right, I want you to try my test, because maybe the first couple of bites, but that second Reese's cup, that half pint of ice cream, that 10, 11th or 12th French fry. I've done it repeatedly, just recent. my little nephew's a type 1 diabetic, and so we've started, we had to, especially when he was first diagnosed, we had to look at the carbohydrates. And I'm not, I have a pretty good sense of carbohydrates. I'm like, all right, French fries, but if I'm with him, I'm like, if we're gonna have French fries, we're gonna have it. But when you look at the number of like how many carbs was in one fry, I was like,
Yeah, and if you're not
But then I
eating
was
some
like,
protein and healthy fats
yeah,
with those fries, it's going to go through you and
yes.
spike your
And I'm
blood
like,
sugar.
so I'm like, I can never have them again. And then I was like, wait a second, who are those people that eat 3 or 4 fries? And so I
Nobody
sat
that I
down. First
know.
of all, he is. Well, let me tell you, and I remember, do you remember we were in Maine and we sat down, we had the most delicious fries on the
Oh, they were
planet.
so
And you
good.
sit there and you're like, if you actually taste them, the first 4 are like a 7 or greater, and maybe like some
And
of
then
the
they start
sauces.
to
All right,
taste
I might have
rancid.
argued, or they just don't hit a
Yeah.
7. Like they
Yep,
don't
I
have to go
remember
from
that.
amazing to
Yeah.
awful, but there is a moment, in space. And so what I've learned is actually now that I do like 4 or 5, and so you start to engage.
But
So
it's really
that's really
interesting what you're
important.
saying, that if you are being intuitive and really paying attention to your body, it is giving you
Yeah,
signals all the time. Wow,
all the
that was
time.
really delicious. If
It's
we eat
just an
just a
operating
handful of them,
system.
and now we don't
Yeah.
actually need any more. It's so
Yes.
the human body is such a magical machine. It's
Now let's
incredible.
let's talk about your friend Michael though, because we have also engineered things in labs. I know because I sold them from an advertising standpoint to where they override your body's
Yeah, you're talking
ability.
about Michael
So I
Moss
am
and
also
Salt, Sugar, Fat
yes, all
and
right,
Hooked,
yeah.
his 2
Yeah,
books.
so
Yeah, they're incredible.
yes. And so when you have on that part, you have an overriding, like that's where we do have to pay attention to it. So that's part one. The second part of it is I observed in patients over the years, and I know this to be true for myself, is that when we are not satisfied, we will eat more to be satisfied, or we will stop ourselves and be like, that's all I'm having, like willpower, that fake muscle that exists in our body. But okay, I'm going to exert this muscle that doesn't exist. And so I'm going to do that and I'm going to be done. But then what happens is I go forth unsatisfied. So I'm still looking for something to satisfy me, which is totally different than operating
Yeah.
resources that my body needs. And so that's where I go looking for the gummy magnesium, or that's where I go looking for the latte mid-afternoon, or I walk by somebody's desk and they happen to have some candy there and I'm like, all right, because my lunch wasn't delicious. And you're the queen of this. Like from the day that I met you, you walked me through how a recipe could actually, little additions could really just change something to complete it from a deliciousness standpoint. And I think a lot of us don't actually, when we're in a meal, or at, like I call it a pit stop, a meal, a snack, whatever. We don't actually observe, is everything all coming together to feel
Yes.
complete from a
Look, but
deliciousness? So it's one of
it's
the
such
reasons
an
I love
important point that the
yeah,
deliciousness factor is not just about the joy of the food, which is incredibly
right,
important, but
right.
understanding the biology, the science behind why that then helps your body function better. And then if you're doing
Yeah,
quality foods and it's delicious, then hello, we're in the promised land, right? We're giving our
yeah.
body the best
And have you
shot.
like, yeah, and we've seen it. Like, I mean, I've made things before. Boy, if I made things before that they look so good. And then you're like, oh, that was like not delicious, Be done with
Yeah.
that. Like, don't, and look, I also want to acknowledge, wait, here's a moment, very important moment for both of us. I think this is really, really like triple click on this for society. I have so much privilege. I just said, like, if I don't like the taste of something, have something else. I have to be very clear. I recognize that with the cost of food and with access and with where we are in the world, and resources and everything, that some people feel lucky if they have anything, and many people are in a place where making choices that are either quality or delicious, and certainly a both of them, does
Yeah, we
not
have a
feel like
lot of
a
people
choice.
living in
This is
food
not a choice.
deserts. It
Yes,
is an
yes.
epidemic
Living in food
in the
deserts
United States
and
and in other
also,
developed countries, and not to mention developing nations, of course, but it
yeah,
is really, really a problem. So thank you for mentioning that, because we do have more choices than some other people, and that should absolutely be
right.
recognized. Let's go back to this digestion hydration thing, because
Yes, yeah,
digestion absorption, this
right.
hydration piece is just so critical, and so many
It's
people are chronically
essential.
dehydrated.
Yeah. Well, because we've told you to drink your body weight or half your body weight in water. We've told you to have 8 ounces of water. We've told you water, like if you see your pee and it's clear, you're hydrated. We've told you, I mean, all of you should pee all the time, you're hydrated, like all of these things. And that's not actually what hydration is. Hydration is the process by which the body has water, and water is getting where it needs to
Into
go.
the
So
cells.
water, well, but in some cases into the cells, but also one of water's key roles is to go along with all the stuff that's supposed to be eliminated and make sure that you eliminate.
And I
Like
think that's
water's
what a lot
supposed
of
to go
people
into
don't
getting
understand. That a lot
urine.
of people that
Yes,
are, what is it, over 75% of women are constipated or experience constipation, is that so
right.
much of it could be helped with movement and hydration. Like you talked about
Yes,
motility and
yes,
hydration.
yes, yes, yes. And yes, and you know, I think on that part, one of the interesting things, here's the one that I think will blow everybody's mind. PYY, one of your weight health hormones, sits in the colon to regulate hydration.
Yes,
Your weight
so
health hormone
important to know.
sits in the colon to
Yes.
regulate hydration. So, Ashley's spidey sense, when we are circumventing our body's own production of GLP-1 and GIP, or we're suppressing it with an
Yes.
agonist on that part, and we are, what's happening to PYY and CCK? Well, I have a lot of people who started off dehydrated and they're more dehydrated. And
Mm.
what we're seeing, they're telling me, they're like, oh my God, I have these like horrible, really dry poops that are very hard to pass. Like they're really hard. And I'm like, yeah. So you're telling me PYY is not getting what it needs. It's not doing what it needs to do. And that's not just an agonist part. I want to come back to, for everyone, we have to remember we bring water into our body, and we need to, the process of hydration is electrolytes taking that water where it's supposed to go, having an optimal amount of water, which, just like our food and our other resources, is not about an amount in the day. It is at regular intervals. We should pit stop to move. We should pit stop to add food. We should pit stop to add water. We should pit stop to be off of our screens, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
whatever
we
it is, but
have
we
to
need to be
treat our
pit
bodies
stopping.
like we're a Formula One car.
That's 100%,
Yeah.
because that's the way they're
Yeah.
designed. And so when you bring the water in, the water escorts the water soluble nutrients into the cells, and it's able to do that when we have enough potassium, and the potassium brings the water in. Now, keep in mind, when your blood sugar is elevated, that the body sees that as a very concerning time period, because that's going to create a stickiness, a problem in your blood, that excess sugar. So it actually brings water from the cells into your blood so that it can hydrate. So it dehydrates. So one of your dehydrators is blood sugar. Another
Oh,
is elevated blood
I
sugar.
love the way that you talk about when you've got high blood sugar, where the sugar is staying in your blood too long and it's not getting into the cells where it's needed to
Right.
provide energy. It's sticky. Because we can all
Yeah.
relate to that. We know what happens when something's sticky, nothing gets through.
Sticky.
It all gets stuck.
That's glycation. That's
Yes.
glycation. That's what we're measuring with
Yes, the glycation.
hemoglobin A1C, is the
Yeah.
glycation. And so I used to always think of it like a Klingon from Star Trek, like where, you know, the sugar's like kind of hanging on to, like there, it's like, you know, and it can make a real mess in that space. But yeah, so there's so many. So dehydration is a root cause of weight health hormone
So is
challenges,
that
and
why
weight health
so many
challenges.
people that are
Yeah.
on GLP-1 medications experience digestive issues? That's not the only reason, but it's one of the
There
reasons.
you go.
One of
It's
the
an
reasons. Yeah.
ecosystem. It's an
Wow.
ecosystem. And it's also a reason too, where keep in mind that one of the things that happens to us is, for many of us, our thirst and our taste are confused. So like, as an example, I might be thirsty, but I leave over here and I go and I eat something because my mouth is saying that I want something. And I'm thinking like, oh, you know, so one of the things that I unpack with my patients is actually differentiating, am I dehydrated, or am
So
I
important, because
actually
often when
hungry for
we
something?
think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty.
Okay, but here's the problem. So now I'm on a medication that's suppressing my hunger.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm
I
not
just, listen,
getting,
there is no judgment about whether you're on a GLP-1 medication or you're not on a
yeah.
GLP-1 medication. But for me, I don't want anything suppressing my natural desire for
Well,
anything. That's just,
I know,
I have
right, right. Yes,
such,
yes, yeah,
desire for
yes. You're
life,
like,
for
don't, yeah,
food,
you're like, don't come from, well,
right?
and food is life
I
for
mean, it
you,
is.
you
I
know?
mean,
So
I
it's
am
like,
just
don't
I
come for that.
lead with
Yes,
taste, right? It's all about how everything
yes,
tastes in
yes.
life, whether it's food or
But
experiences. But yeah.
you just said something so important. And again, this is, again, I'm going to harp on the doctor, the modeling of a doctor can prescribe this and tell you to go take it, and they'll tell you more protein, more exercise, and I'll see you, and we'll just continue to follow hopefully your body composition. This is not in the wheelhouse of doctors. A doctor that, like the majority of doctors, there are some doctors who are amazing at nutrition and have been trained that way, but the majority, that's a problem in our society. And here's one of the reasons why. The dosing matters. I don't want to make you not hungry. That's not what this medication, because it wasn't your hunger. If your hunger, so for me, when my hormones have left or at different points in my life, I felt hungry or I didn't feel full. So shifting that using a little bit of it, which is already thousands of times, is already an exponential increase to our own, that might have value on that part. But on the flip side, this whole idea of like, let's put you on a dose and let's just keep going on a higher dose and a higher dose and a higher dose without asking to decode the signals that the body is sending, and then blaming the outcomes as side effects or blaming the medication or blaming the person. It's a disaster.
So many people, a lot of people are getting, and practitioners are getting very good results on lower doses. We call it microdosing, but you call it low dosing.
I don't. I call it low dosing.
They call it, we're familiar with the term microdosing.
I lost the marketing.
Yeah. You lost that battle. So people are calling it microdosing. Well, it's lower dosing.
Yes.
Having a lot of success in doing lower doses of a GLP-1 medication in conjunction with optimizing digestion. So one of the really key points in your book that I really appreciate is optimizing your weight health ecosystem with or without a GLP-1 medication, that it is so important that we address our digestion, our absorption, our hydration, our blood sugar, our entire ecosystem, whether we're on a GLP-1 medication or not. And that is what the whole point of Your Best Shot, your book, is about. So let's go back to the pizza, because the pizza's been sitting there on the counter now and we haven't built our pizza and it's not going in the oven and I'm getting hungry. So
we haven't rolled out the crust.
So we're just at the crust here. And whilst, a good crust, I could eat it on its own. I want to put some toppings and some cheese and I want to bake it and I want to eat it, right? So the crust is our digestion and hydration. Yeah. What comes next? Let's talk about the toppings.
So then the sauce.
Oh, the sauce. That's right. We got to have a good sauce on the base.
I debated sauce and cheese, and the sauce for some might be olive oil. It might be tomato sauce. It could be pesto. It's, whatever under the sun. The sauce is better nutrition. And there are 4 pillars of better nutrition: quantity, quality, timing, and balance. And we've actually already talked about them. We've gone through looking at, you cannot pick one. You can't have great quality and not have quantity and timing and balance delivered on that part. So, again, I give you the tools to go through and assess on that part. What's really interesting to me is that most of us are like good at or doing well with 1 or 2 of those. I think everybody feels, we've been taught by the diet industry and sort of society to feel like we're just a hot mess, or or we've given ourselves pats on the back for one part of it. And you're like, no, it's all 4 pillars. So there's a definition that I created for better nutrition, and this is what leads your sauce. Your sauce is, so better nutrition is about giving your body what it needs to run better today. So it's your body, it's personal, today it's time stamped, while avoiding what can irritate, overwhelm, and disrupt its efforts. So that's important. It's 2 parts on that piece. So a sauce that has too much of anything, even if it's amazing, if you piled three jars of sauce on there, it's going to be too much for your body. If the sauce is, if you look at it and it has ingredients in there that don't work for your body, say you're personally allergic to garlic, you can't have garlic in your sauce. So it's irritating or it's disrupting there. If it's made with something that is made in a chemistry lab, let's say it's not actually red and it's made with a red dye on that part, then you're asking your body is like, oh, okay, thanks for giving me something red. But when it goes to use the lycopene, it's like, I don't have any lycopene. And it might also find something offensive about that was in that red dye. And now it's irritated. Now it's tucking something into fat. Now it doesn't have its resources.
So it's a great analogy, the pizza, isn't it? Because if you are not taking in appropriate nutrition, in the, quality nutrition that's appropriate for your body, in the appropriate timing, the pacing, all that we've talked about, your crust gets sloppy. It doesn't it just doesn't function, and it's not going to be satisfying, i.e.,
Or it tastes ick.
Taste
Yeah.
disgusting, meaning your digestion, your whole
Yes.
ecosystem's going to be
Yes.
disrupted, and it's just not going to be a great pizza and a great
Yes.
experience. So then we've got our toppings, right?
Well, hold, because we've got the cheese and the
Okay.
toppings, but I want to make a point about the nutrition. There is something really important that is not happening in society, and this is one of the ones that I get really frustrated about. We have a medication-oriented society, and so supplements are seen as on that side. So people ask about like, oh, medication or supplement. Should I take this? Should I do this? Supplements are nutrients. They actually are part of what I call your total nutrition. So in that space, I'm not asking you, I am not saying to you that, hey, your sauce is going to be built just from food. You might be like me and you could be like, I'm not good at getting an orange for whatever reason, or you could be, I'm allergic to barley and barley has some great nutrients in it. So maybe I get something else in a supplement form. So one of the key things that the book invites you to do, yes, we will talk about supplements and toppings, but is to look at your total nutrition and see where, just like in your crust, where we may need to add some things to help you to optimize it. Then it's very foundational from the building standpoint. So I just wanted that total nutrition, I think, is an important part of the better nutrition conversation. Now we can go on to the cheese.
Oh, good, because, everybody likes the cheese on their pizza, don't they?
That's right.
Except for me in my books, where I think you can make a delicious pizza without cheese at all. However, I digress,
Yes.
all right? So let's talk about so we're going to do the cheese before the toppings. Okay.
Right, exactly.
Is that how you like to make your pizza in real life?
Well, it's like to me, there's the foundational pieces of a pizza: cheese, sauce, and crust, and then there are toppings. So I actually don't care what order, and that's actually a really good point. You could have started with your crust and your topping and then put your sauce on and your cheese. But at the end of the day, and I think even in a pizza in your book where you would do, like, say you did like hemp pesto on top of a crust or whatever, you could argue that was like your sauce and cheese, like in that piece. So the piece of it here is lifestyle choices. And I happen to just use 4 pillars because it worked for me. And I think because we don't do a good job with talking about pillars, we don't do a good job of talking about quantity, quality, timing, and balance in our lifestyle choices. So you can take movement and you could think about quantity, quality of it, timing, and the balance, the diversity of it. You could look at something like stress, and you want to think about the quantity is really the problem. It's not the presence of stress.
We can't avoid stress, and we cannot turn stress off. It's not possible.
And I love stress. Are you kidding? Like I'm amazing under stress. Like stress is what makes me perform. It's what makes if it's on an athletic side, if I'm standing up, I'm one of these days maybe doing stand-up comedy, like whatever it is on that part. Stress is amazing in that way. You do have to come in and be able to understand, but we have to turn it off, right? And there's a timing for it, and there's a timing when we should be out of the stress mode. And then there's also a balance, different types of stress, in that part. So I go through all of those. And then one of the ones that I think deserves the most attention, and it never gets it, is the concept of joy. And joy is really interesting because I think
oxytocin. We're all wanting to increase our oxytocin,
right? Like our Annika Becca. We're like, hold on a second.
We talked about that with Dr. Annika Becker in her episode, where she's all about microdosing oxytocin throughout the day. It's such a great term.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's why I have a dog. So, I microdose my oxytocin throughout the day, or he forces me to, but he really doesn't. I'm just like there. I'm like, oh, can I pet you? Can I cuddle you? Can I, like all of those different things. And, we do things like I have the picture that my niece drew there, and she wrote these really cute words on it. The color of it, like when I'm here, like it brings me joy. Like it reminds me, and it just happens to be the colors of my book. So it also looked, fabulous. But I think what we miss in a society that's very much given us messaging like, don't worry, be happy, right? In theory, I love that messaging. However, I'm never going to not worry, and I'm not always just going to be happy. And when we unpack what joy is joy is experiential. Joy is something that in our worst moments on this planet, for us as a human, we can have joy, we can have gratitude while feeling awful. We can be mourning, we can be, any of these other pieces. Why do I bring up joy? Because desire for more joy is something that my patients have expressed as one of the reasons that they came to see me. You know, this digestive issue is sucking the joy out of my life, or my weight is bothering me so much, you know, or those pieces. Not many people have looked at the fact of joy is actually a vehicle for optimizing our weight health. So I was somebody who, you know, has been told things like any of us, like, you know, be mindful with your eating, or, you know, be happy, or do these other things. And I was like, huh. But until I started to dive into joy, and I started to assess what brings me joy and also what detracts from joy, it really helped me as an exercise to figure out ways to bring joy into enough spaces in a day. I am not saying to you, you're going to be joyful all day long. But if you had said to me, as one of my patients did, you know, Ashley, I pretty much feel like Monday through Friday, I don't have any joy in my life. I hate my job. I'm single. I'm, you know, not in a great relationship with my family. Like, just, we went through it all, right? And we're unpacking it. And I was like, all right. So my job is for us to figure out how to have you have joy during your workday. And it started with, they always got food delivered at lunch. And that was her job, was to place the order for food getting delivered. And I said, what if you left? What if you left? And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I understand that you could do delivery and it comes, but what if you placed the order and you went and picked it up? She's like, well, they'll never let me. They won't do this. And I said, you know how they'll let you? Ask everybody in the office, what is something that if it didn't matter where it was, they could, it's so delicious to them and they want it and they'd love to have it for lunch. And then you go and get it. And it might not be someone that where, you know, they don't deliver to you. And then the second part is, tell the HR, whoever your boss or whatever, show them how much money you're spending on the difference between the delivery. And you're like, I'll walk and go get it, or I'll go do. Game changer. She's like, she's like, that time period. She's like, she even made friends with somebody down at a coffee shop who she goes and she now, like, and they text during the day and, you know, whatever. And it was like, it's like a different person walked in. She felt so disempowered in her life, and now she had power. And I know that feeling, you know, on that piece. So my point on that is, there may be simple things. Many of us kill our own joy on social media, especially as it gets later and later into night. I'm raising both my hands and my feet for myself. You know, I will give excuses that I like to go on to check my basketball scores or to see what people are saying about the basketball game. But then I see something that upsets me about humanity, or I see something that I think is wrong about a GLP-1 agonist. And now I'm in like, you know, like, and I'm on that part, joy sucker. So I realized, like, as soon as that happens, I have to stop. I have to stop. Like, I made a deal with myself. You can go on, you can check the basketball score, you can experience joy. If your team, Cavs, we got to get it together. If your team's not doing well, maybe don't get on there and look at it. And then choose a different time. And joy activates weight health because it's part of helping our vagus nerve to relax and to work better on that part.
Yeah,
So
it's
our
such an
cheese,
important piece.
we can snow it with our cheese. We can put little bits of our cheese. And to your point, there might be a time where you're making your pizza and you're like, I don't really need to do anything else different with my cheese. But we have to make sure we're at least assessing our lifestyle choices to make sure that they're
Well, in the
not
context of this
negatively
conversation, we
impacting.
have to put cheese on our
Yeah,
pizza. I was
yeah,
making it to the kind of
exactly. I mean,
practical
you
level.
know,
But
yeah,
it brings up another point about rest and sleep, and how combating or balancing or offsetting the effects of stress, or whatever terms we want to use, is so critical, excuse me, for this weight
it is.
health ecosystem balancing.
Yeah,
So you do address this in the book. So
yeah.
what do we need to be mindful or pay attention to with regards to that? And why is it important within the context of this conversation?
Yeah. One of the reasons I'm so keen on timing as part of better nutrition is we have a whole recovery window. So we have to we have to make our caloric and our activity time bound. And we have to make sure that we're not taking from our activity time period and dropping more stuff on our
Oh, the
recovery window.
recovery
Meaning,
period and window is something that we
yeah,
just don't pay enough attention to.
the body has a whole to-do list. Let's
Yeah.
just pretend for a moment that in our recovery window, there are 10 things that it needs to get to. If we come in and we're still digesting what happened during the day and we're digesting our food from the day, we've now put 2 to 5 other things at the top of the list. That means that you can't start your recovery to-do list. So it means instead of maybe having 10 hours to do it, you only have 6 hours to do it. And now we're back in the like middle finger to my boss thing. Like stop. Like this is, isn't better. A couple years back, I was giving a talk with a colleague of mine, Todd Anderson. I love him.
Yeah.
Like he does such great work in the sleep space. And sure, like I was totally like, all right, I'll try mouth taping, or like, okay, I'm going to put a mask on my face. And those things definitely helped. His conversation and commentary on social jet lag as a term,
Oh, yeah. Such a
understanding
great term.
social jet lag, understanding that when, for some of us, our later nights are during the week, and then we try to make up for our sleep on the day, on the weekend. And for some of us, it's the opposite, or it's 1 or 2 nights here or there, or maybe it's when we travel, we sleep a certain way. When we don't, I have a lot of people who travel for work that are like, I do so well when I'm, on the road and not at home. But the body actually, a window variant of about 30 minutes is significant enough to contribute to this social jet lag. And we know what jet lag is. Jet lag is the body feeling sluggish and incapable of it being of operating at optimal levels on that part. Really driven by, like, when we've thought about jet lag historically, we've thought about it as changing of time zones. So the body is dysregulated from a time standpoint. This one is a dysregulation of saying the body's recovery window has been disrespected. So one of the most important things we can do is set that bedtime and keep that bedtime and try to wake up, at the same time. But the bedtime really seems to be, I don't want to say the more important, because maybe there's research that'll correct me, but it seems to be extremely important. And similar to the better be delicious, and similar to timing and everything else, we can't just be like, oh, I'm going to set a bedtime I know I can keep 2 a.m. There is actually a quality component to it. There is a depreciation in value the later that we're asking our body to stay awake, especially as we're going against dark and light, from that time period. So the one place where we could alter our window is from a seasonal standpoint, where like summer and winter, and probably still, not have it be too disadvantageous to us on that part.
Yeah, the sleep and rest, and again, the quality of it is also really important. And sleep hygiene, is something that, with the advent of devices, is something that many of us, myself included, are not adhering to. And we're just very, very stimulated at night, and it affects our quality of sleep. So when we talk about the toppings, and you alluded to supplements being part of that category, not being the entirety of the category, I do want to ask you about these supplements that are trending. And one of the key messages in your book is, well, you can be taking in all these supplements, but if you're not absorbing the supplements, then we've got an issue. So creatine is something that you address in the book, because obviously it's important, and it's been trending very heavily, particularly in women over 50, and how important it is for brain health and muscles and all the things. But in the book, you really talk about how if your digestion, your crust is not good, then you could be taking in all this creatine, but you're not absorbing it. It's not doing anything. So talk us through that.
Yeah. Well, and it certainly can't undo, a supplement can't override. You can't have like great cognitive function and have poor blood sugar and poor digestion, everything else to be like, I take creatine. But I think that, the forms of some of the supplements are doing a really good job of being able to get there. I'm really interested. There's a creatine HCl compared to a creatine monohydrate, and the HCl, hydrochloric acid. When we think about gut health, it appears with lower doses that we can actually get some, great results. Does it go 1-to-1 with monohydrate and others? I think more research on that part. But I've enjoyed taking that as a supplement, as somebody who also is very aware of how digestion, what challenges my digestion. I think the other part is to know that it's amino acids. So creatine is amino acids. So I'm not suggesting that we can just eat amino acids and we can meet our creatine needs, but I am putting the combination of, we can be eating a lot of protein, not digesting it optimally. So not breaking it down and having it get where it's supposed to go. And so one of the questions I have is creatine supplementation actually resolving an issue of or band-aided an issue of impaired digestion and suboptimal protein intake overall, from a diversity of amino acids, et cetera. And then we haven't spoken about genetics at all. I think genetics is really interesting when it comes to supplementation, because the form of our food, like what we get from food is important, but the form of our supplements is really going to matter. And depending on where your body's, your genes are more efficient and more inefficient, you may be someone that needs a certain form, or you may need a higher amount of a nutrient. So cholines are really like choline and zinc. We hear a little bit about something called methylation. And I've heard people be like, well, I take methylfolate, or I take methylcobalamin being B12. I'm like, okay, so that's important for us. That's also important to know that if you are somebody who has inefficiencies in your methylation cycle, then we may be looking at sort of the backdoor side of methylation, which is choline and zinc. And we might need to, throughout your life, not just in childbearing, as you're having a baby, we may need to increase your choline. So there are a lot of resources, that we can look at. Sometimes I have access to those, sometimes I don't. But when we look at supplementation, the hardline rule has to be, I use my better not perfect everywhere. I'm pretty close to perfect, or trying to get us as close to a superlative as possible in the quality of our supplements. And that means the form of them, and it means the other ingredients in there, because we're only taking them to try to optimally resource the body. We're not, the deliciousness and the other things are, they're not about a foundational, like the process of eating. But when we look at that, we do have to look at their quality. And we also have to understand that when we add supplements, we need to think about, what supplements might already be in our food in the form of enriched or fortifications, that are in there. And then how does it factor in with our overall food? But then also, how is my body able to use it? And I think that's what you're getting to, which is so important on that part.
So in terms of restoring healthy and appropriate inflammatory responses in the body, omega fatty acids are so incredibly important, and you have some great information in the book about that. So what are your general recommendations about fish oil, about eating walnuts and almonds and, wild caught, salmon and, sardines, for example? You make some really great distinctions in the book and things to consider when supplementing, and also getting your intake through olive oil and other quality foods.
And this is really important. And this is where I go against something that I often say. So I often say that not much has changed in nutrition in the last 20, 30, 40 years. We just maybe understand how the body works a little bit better, and we understand the importance of nutrition.
Certainly the My Plate and some of the government recommendations have not changed very much, and we would like them to. Yeah.
That's right. I think we're done with the pyramids. I think the pyramids
I love that line in your book. Pyramids
Egypt.
belong in Egypt.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Jess.
And the limitations of the food pyramid and the My Plate and some of these ridiculous recommendations that we know are driven by lobbying. But anyway, I digress.
Can we just also, just because we have to, I was just listening to your podcast with Jess, and he's my editor also. And boy, did we have so much fun in telling the story of all of this. He's such a, number one, encouraging me to tell my story, and the support in telling patient stories and those pieces. But, when you come in and you're talking about what hasn't worked with certain recommendations, I can start to there was a risk of just coming and being like, that's so dumb. This doesn't work. Don't pay attention to that. And so again, try leaning into humor, but also really thinking about it, thinking about how we took something that was one of the wonders of the world, how in the world, did they make this pyramid? And then we came over and we created the most unwonderful way of thinking about food and recommendations. And also, by the way, nobody adhered to but even had they adhered to it, it wouldn't have even. So anyway, I digress. Just
it's just so heavily politicized, and they lobby for it. And honestly, it is just about what's appropriate for you. So the personalization point and sections of your book, it's such an important thing. And also,
and if you want to make your pizza like a pyramid because you love a pyramid, go for it. I have no issues. You can stack your toppings.
But to go back to the point that we don't ever want to be taking supplements or building a plan outside of having a conversation with our practitioner, a practitioner who knows us, knows our
Yeah.
medical history, knows our personality, our lifestyle, what we want to achieve, etc., that it is something that needs to be done with an appropriate practitioner, particularly taking supplements. It's just the wild, wild west out there. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Which we are acknowledging privilege, and I'm also acknowledging that I have many of my colleagues who don't think that as dietitians we should be helping people with their supplements, or people don't need supplements. So there's a lot. Access is an issue. My colleague Dr. Lodog wrote this great book called Fortify Your Life. I think it's one of the best reads on supplements. So I that's
yeah,
one of the resources that I recommend and use. And here's what we want to think about. Like, so magnesium and lactobacilli, because I didn't have access to bifidobacteria at the time, but later bifidobacteria, they changed my life. Like, I just want to I mean, they literally changed my life. Like, and maybe I would have been a really great comedian out there, but maybe I also wouldn't have lived past 25. And I don't say that flippantly, but I was not on a path to being happy in my life or feeling like I was, understanding what I could do with myself. And so when you have that pivot and you turn around, and it was a magnesium supplement, and here was what my practitioner said. He's like, hey, or a probiotic. He's like, your body doesn't have what it needs. Yes, I could tell you to eat chocolate, and I'm very happy if you eat chocolate. And at the time I was having carob and not chocolate, so who knew? But, I could be like, okay, I'm going to have dark chocolate. I'm going to do, all these things. But right before bed, I don't need chocolate. I don't need to I'm super caffeine.
yeah, this is the thing, though. I don't think that we think about chocolate containing caffeine. That
Yeah, right.
it
Also,
contains a
another point,
stimulant.
or
Yeah.
even the bliss chemical, right?
Yes.
Like, so when you look at that and you say like, oh, like I don't need, so in that space, like when I also don't ascribe to we can get it in from food. We can't, we can, one may be able to, depending on your resources, your access, etc. But most of the time I'm leaning into supplementation. The reason that it's in the toppings is you cannot just topping your way to a delicious pizza. You just can't. Like, if the crust sucks, if the sauce doesn't taste well, etc. on that part. And where we are today is where a lot of people who are like hanging their last dollar and their hope on a supplement making that difference. And that's where I want to step in and really point out to us that we need strategic supplementation. I don't think you should be on supplements for longer than typically 90 days without reevaluating based on a variety of data. What your needs for supplements, what your needs for medications, all these different things will certainly change as you optimize your weight health, if you shrink fat cells, if you, gain muscle, like all these different things. And so we should be regularly
Look, I
checking
think this
in
is a
on it.
really
And
important point that
that's
you
hard.
make in the book,
Yeah.
which is to assess and reassess. And
Yeah.
as we are
Yeah.
looking at our whole ecosystem, meaning a system that's made up of multiple systems that all speak to each other,
Right.
when you change one piece of a system, it has an effect on the rest of the whole system. So we have to see, is this thing that we've put on our pizza actually working? Is it appropriate? And then 90 days from now, when the system has changed and rebalanced and has a different configuration, is it now still appropriate? And I think a lot of us are chasing static goals with ourselves. And we've been taking the same supplement for 20 years. Oh, I've been on that, and it may not actually be appropriate, or said differently, in that particular quantity or whatever. So I think the assess and reassess.
Or we're on auto renew, right? Like, I love
my
auto
God, that's a
renew,
great way of saying it. Auto renew.
you can get a discount on your, and I love that. But then make sure before you auto renew, like for, your third month or,
such
really
a good
important.
point.
Yeah.
So the assessments in the book are so fantastic, and how you methodically take us through these key components of building our pizza, why it matters, how we can actually implement the strategies and the information that you impart to build this pizza that's appropriate, and then how to assess and reassess. So I loved the book. I read it in one day. I couldn't put it down because it was just so important in terms of this conversation that we're all constellating around. How can we be healthier and happier? How can we be at our ideal weight? How can we regulate and optimize our blood sugar, our hormones, sleep well, have energy, feel great in our bodies, basically? And for me, I love the title of the book, Your Best Shot. because we've talked about these individual strategies. We all know the shot. 1 in 10 people are on one sort of form or another. And then, but the message of the book of it, your best shot being when you optimize your body and then discuss potential supplements and medications with a practitioner who knows you, and then continuing to assess and reassess with them. So it's such an important conversation right now, when so many people are confused. We're being bombarded in the media. So if you had to give me the Cliff Note version of why it's important to know about what your best shot is and to take your best shot, what would it be in summation? How would you pitch me that I need to care about my natural switch and then I need to take my best shot?
Yeah, I think that there's two different ways. One is maybe a little bit the more woo, and one's the functional.
Oh, let's
way.
go
So the
woo and then
functional
let's
one,
go functional. I love to put the two together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
You want to go? You want to
Okay,
go functional
so
first and then woo?
I
All
think
right.
I want to go
Okay.
functional. I think maybe, but yeah. So I just said that. Yeah. So I think the functional one is we are designed with weight health hormones. When those weight health hormones are suboptimally functioning, we cannot have our weight health. Weight health is the foundation of optimal health. So if you have any interest in optimal health, or if you are focusing and trying to restore your health, you can't do that without weight health, which means you have to know about your weight health hormones.
All right, go woo woo with me. Let's pull our crystals out because
Okay.
we love it. We do.
Yeah. So I believe that we are all here for a very specific purpose. Like we're here for in this time period, in this body, in this, your soul chooses it, whatever any of those pieces are, but we're here in this moment, each of us. And I know this for myself, on that part. And we cannot fulfill our life purpose when we are battling against our body from an operation standpoint, from our health. So understanding or having weight health or being on the path, and look, you're not going to have it all the time. This book exists as much for someone who is like really struggling with their health as much as somebody who has it right now and is like, well, I want a toolkit for when I might not have it, or I want to reduce the risk, is imperative to me for you to have, because somebody reading this book when they fulfill their life purpose, they're going to be out there and they're going to figure out a cure for cancer. Somebody else is going to figure out like how to, I don't know, have better trains across the country. Somebody else is going to figure out like all of these different things. And we genuinely will just, when we have more joy in our lives, we're genuinely just a society that likes each other better and plays better together and all of these other pieces. So for me, it really is I know my life's purpose, and fulfilling my life purpose literally is coming together in this book. I am meant to be here in this moment on this planet at this time to help people connect the dots between their weight health hormones, their weight health, and their optimal health, to usher in a weight health approach, not just in medicine, in healthcare, in our society, and how, who we accept, like all of these different pieces. I know that's my job, and I know that I could not be here doing that today if I didn't have the resources and if I hadn't learned how to optimize my weight health. And I think that's everyone's journey. So to me, it's, for the person, and we want to go real woo on that part. I really also believe I don't want another 8-year-old to experience what I experienced. And there is so much trauma in the world because of bullies who are themselves unhappy, broken, challenged. That's a health issue. And the people who are being bullied and being mistreated. And all of this, at the end of the day, if we can optimize weight health, we can create generational weight health, which means that our kids and, our communities for generations are healthier on that part. So I think there's a huge opportunity.
I mean, you didn't even get woo. That just sounds
maybe woo wasn't the right word.
Yeah, that sounds like
Pollyanna
purpose. That sounds like karmic restitution.
Purpose.
That sounds like rebalancing. But we know that
I am
hold...
burning things each night that I hope will happen in my life. Does that sound woo? Yeah. Okay,
I just mean it. It all makes sense to me. So maybe it's just not woo at all to me. But we know that we hold our emotions in our gut. our instincts. That's why it's called a gut instinct, our intuition. And when we have clear pathways, our body is functioning, we're sleeping well, we have energy, we feel happy, we feel healthy, we've got a zest for life. Our purpose becomes really, really clear. And what we do and do
Super
not
clear.
want to do, it is so incredibly clear. The clarity that we have about what we want to do and who we want to be is potent, and it's delicious and incredible. And I think that's we all want to be operating at our best so that we can have the best life possible. I think, to your point, that the book is a really, really great blend of science, just practical science, biology, but practical strategies you can implement once you understand why it's important. Quizzes, assessments so that you can determine where you are and the state of your health. Some humor, which is great. Really good analogies. That's one of your superpowers, is explaining things. But then you also pair the book with these online resources. So you can scan the barcode, you can use these incredible resources on your website to then implement everything. And it's a living, breathing document that will be changing. So just tell us about that, because I think it's really important. Okay, well, great. I read this book, but then how do I determine what's right for me? And then how do I implement it? You've provided all of these resources. So it is an amazing toolkit.
Yeah, in a way, the book was the last thing that I did. And I had a lot of fear because I'm used to, I think, and I've been told that when I speak and when I do videos and things like that, like I didn't know I was going to find somebody like Jess to help me with the writing.
Well, you had
but
me
I was
for
like,
that.
oh gosh.
So
And you,
I
thank you.
introduced you, and it was
And
a
so,
happy
yes,
little marriage.
exactly. Yeah. And I was like, what if it doesn't land? And so this was my security blanket. My security blanket was, all right, I'm going to have videos online. I'm going to have all the resources that we've already created at the Better Nutrition Program for the last 5 to 7 years and continue to create to help people evaluate menus, guides, et cetera, for you, and things for you and your practitioners to bring you guys together so that you can have these conversations. Maybe somebody isn't trained the way that I'm trained, and you want to share with them this so that they have their thoughts about it. You can share it. They can see the evidence-based, et cetera. And then I did something really crazy. And I was like, well, I just always feel better when I can talk to a human. I was at the end of the day, I was like, I'm just like, when I have these things, like sometimes I just need to explain, like, I know she said that if it's like, and I've had patients like this. I know she said that if like my poop smelled, but what is an okay smell and what isn't? And now I'm embarrassed to ask that, or I'm Googling and I'm not really getting it. And I was like, stop the Google. So
And also
we brought you over
AI
to,
spits
yeah,
out some things that are categorically untrue because the
just wrong.
internet
Yes.
is a cesspool of disinformation. So
Yes.
to have a human
Yes. I
experience,
got
you have to
on,
speak to a human. You have to relate to a human.
I got on a podcast the other day and the woman started and she said, well, I know you provided your bio, but I did a little digging. And she's like, okay, I just want to tell you, I'm not going with
Are you
this.
talking about the
But
Ask
I want you to,
Ashley? Are you going to go there?
well, no. And she went in and she was like, and I went in and she's like, she's like, I decided to use AI. She's like, but I feel like this isn't you. And she's like, did you just come through a whole cancer situation? And I was like, no.
Wow.
And she said, oh, it said on there that like your work is inspired by your cancer journey. And I know exactly where it's coming
Wow.
from. I have an intern who is very prolific on social media. That is her story. And somewhere in there, she mentioned my name in
Oh my
conjunction and
goodness.
Chatty.
Yeah.
And so, like in this part, it might like it, I can tell you how the web was woven, but Chatty's not. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it's really concerning. Anyway, I digress. We've made access to our health coaches. Remember, coaches are not practitioners. They're not giving you recommendations. They're not personalizing your nutrition plan. We've made that available also at discounted rates and access. If you can't find some, if you're interested, we've got that. But the coaching part, I wanted you to be able to connect with a human in a HIPAA compliant space where you could ask a question. So it's not on Facebook. It's not on, I wasn't going to create a group somewhere. I wanted this one for me to be in a place where you could ask this question and it would be protected as the best, that we can on that part. So we've put, this is a whole system. Like it's not a read a book and go out and try to find it. It should all be there for you, with the idea then that we're hopefully directing you to, or we're able to connect along with the resources that you already have on that part.
Yeah, it's such an important book and toolkit
Thank
and
you.
set of resources, particularly in this chapter that we're in with trying to navigate this. And I mean, we're always going to be navigating this. I mean, let's be clear, people have been, but the toolkit has changed and the
Mm-hmm.
resources that we have available have changed and they will continue to change. So I know that you're very much on the forefront of
Oh,
that space and speaking at many different things around the world, particularly in the United States, and working closely with other practitioners and legislators to make sure that this is a conversation that continues to be more nuanced, which I think is a really key component of this for me. So I always close every episode with the same question. So I'm going to ask it of you within the context of this conversation. For somebody that has a dream in their heart that they want to be at their optimal weight health, but doesn't feel like they have what it takes to make it happen and doesn't know where to start, what would you say to them?
I got all teary and chills. It sounds so like I'm selling myself, but I wrote the book for you. Like I wrote this for you. I cannot tell each person, there is no everybody should start here. The reason behind the book, and potentially even if there was something I would invite everybody to do, is recognize your body as an operating system is sending you signals all the time. So that what we want to do right now for optimization at any space of your weight health is to decode those signals and not do something because somebody else tells us this is what you should do. It really starts with decoding our own signals.
Yeah. Oh, I just wish you all the best with this book, and I hope it goes into the stratosphere because it's just such an important message. Oh, so much fantastic information. I have written some stuff down, so you've got it all in one place. And then go and get the book where Ashley walks you through what to do step by step. The body is a weight health ecosystem that needs optimized resources to run better. And so excess weight, food cravings, poor sleep, fatigue, all of these symptoms that we get are signs that our ecosystem is out of balance and needs attention. So that important connection between our gut, hormones, blood sugar, and metabolism. And to optimize our weight health, we've got to start by improving our gut health and digestion. So with the right resources and working with a practitioner who understands your body, you can be in the driver's seat of your weight health. I loved when Ashley said it was the first time I stopped feeling like a victim about my weight. And we are in a metabolic and weight health crisis. Over 90% of Americans are classified as metabolically unhealthy. So 9 in 10 Americans don't meet the criteria. And 1 in 4 has fatty liver disease. They think it's 1 in 3. And I will have Dr. Hannanay on the podcast shortly to talk about fatty liver disease. So it makes sense that over 1 in 10 Americans has tried a GLP-1 med. And the real revolution and gift of these GLP-1 shots to the public is this greater awareness of how our body operates, that we naturally produce these weight health hormones, GLP-1, GIP, PYY, and CCK, and that these hormones act as the switch, as Ashley calls it, to regulate our hunger and satiety and blood sugar, and that these hormones and others are deployed in the lining of our digestive tract. So we've got to restore better health by optimizing the natural production of these hormones. And GLP-1 is getting all of the press because of the meds. It's a hormone that's produced in the body, and a lot of it is produced in the gut. It regulates our appetite. The switch goes on and speaks to leptin and ghrelin, our hunger and satiety hormones, to regulate our appetite. It helps regulate our blood sugar. GLP-1 speaks to our pancreas to determine how much insulin, another hormone, is released to control how much sugar is in the blood. It supports heart health. There's receptor sites on our heart muscle, in the endothelial lining of our blood vessels. It's involved in plaque formation and the integrity of our blood vessels. It impacts body composition. It's involved with what kind of fat mass we have, what type of fat we have, our muscle integrity. It's involved in bone health, bone formation, bone breakdown, bone building. We've got GLP-1 receptors in our mouth, which send signals to our brain and our gut. So our natural hormone is like a motion detector. I love that analogy. It stays on for 2 to 5 minutes, where it gets where it needs to go, and then our body sends the signal to rest and digest. So if our body isn't functioning properly, the 2 to 5 minutes may not be enough time to get the job done. So the difference between the switch and the GLP-1 shot is GLP-1s are a form of hormone replacement, not the same as HRT, but it is injecting our bodies with a synthetic version of the hormone. So they're peptide hormones made from amino acids, which is why it's so important to be taking in enough protein. And then estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid hormone, they're steroid hormones made from fats. So that's why we need to be taking in healthy fats and all those omega-3s in order for those hormones to be functioning in an optimal way. And the considerations when looking at a GLP-1, I like her term considerations instead of pros and cons, positives and negatives, that these drugs have some benefits. If you have suboptimal production and function of these hormones, they can help reduce food noise, suppress your appetite, regulate blood sugar, help you lose weight, improve heart health. But the things to be aware of, I loved her egg analogy that at the elevated dosages that most people are taking these peptides, it's like putting 4 hormone eggs in your body instead of 1. And that the medication stays on 24 hours a day instead of 2 to 5 minutes. So you don't get that rest and digest signal. It's like you're on a treadmill constantly. So it suppresses your switch, the natural production of your weight health hormones. So I take her point about, for many of us, thirst and taste, hunger gets confused. So when we're on a GLP-1 med that suppresses our hunger and causes dehydration, those signals get even more confused. And the drugs delay gastric emptying. So it's harder for nutrients to get where they're supposed to go because it takes longer to get into the absorption phase. And so these drugs are dehydrating. They interfere with digestion and can cause other health issues. So if you have suboptimal digestion, you may see a lot of the side effects that we see on the news. So digestive problems, sleep issues, fatigue, increased inflammation, coughing. It was interesting what she was saying about the Ozempic cough that's become famous, that it's a sign of impaired digestion and dehydration. And the note about hydration not being taking in the water, it's the process of the water getting where it needs to go. So getting into your cells and then getting into your colon to be able to help you eliminate stools. So PYY, one of our weight health hormones, sits in the colon to regulate hydration. So a lot of people are getting on GLP-1 meds already dehydrated, and then they become more dehydrated as a result, which causes the constipation that we see a lot and the digestive issues. So the dose matters, and understanding what's going on in your body before you go on these meds and then while you're on these meds. So without optimizing your body function, the medication can exacerbate existing issues and cause others that you didn't have to begin with. And her note about rapid weight loss and the problems that can cause, because the fat cells hold toxins and they're active. So they're running chaos throughout the ecosystem. So when you lose weight and shrink fat cells at a rapid pace, your body releases the toxins that are trapped in those fat cells at a rapid pace. So it's just preferable to lose weight at a steady pace so you can detoxify at a steady pace and can avoid feeling really sick, which is what happens to a lot of people. So when you're deciding if a GLP-1 med is right for you, just work with a good doctor and a dietitian that's going to listen to you, look at the whole story, look at what's going on in your body to determine if these medications are appropriate for you and at what dosage. So with poor digestion, the meds can be problematic. So microdosing, low dosing, people are seeing a lot of great results with that. So taking a much lower dose of a GLP-1 med in conjunction with optimizing your digestion and hydration, looking at your blood sugar, looking at the entire ecosystem can be a more effective approach. And if you want to titrate off of the meds, her point about people going off it abruptly without improving their digestion is what's causing the Ozempic rebound, gaining the weight back. So looking after our body composition, losing fat, gaining muscle while we're on the meds in preparation to titrate off of them so that we can maintain our results. And just taking the note that while you're on the meds, your natural hormone is not getting activated. So you've got to restart your natural hormone production, or you can gain the weight back and then have blood sugar issues and other problems. So the best shot, your best shot, which is such a great title for the book, is optimizing your switch, your weight health hormones, and looking after your gut health and digestion and eating in a strategic way, which is all outlined in Ashley's book. So her point about better health, starting with assessment, that we've got to assess our state of health and decode our body signals to inform the best approach. So working with a doctor and a dietitian to do that. What is your body telling you? Does your body have what it needs? So there's all these fantastic assessments in the book, looking at changes to your mouth or body odor, changes in your sleep, energy, bowel movements, skin, all these signals indicate those imbalances. So, and then once you determine that you have suboptimal weight health, what kind do you have? And that informs the approach as well. So this is all outlined in the book. And the role of genetics. So some of our genes are more efficient than others, and we may need certain amounts of nutrients, more of one nutrient than another, and we need to know all of this. So again, looking at your labs and other diagnostic testing, and then looking at your digestion. Your motility, are things going in the wrong direction? Do you have acid reflux? Looking at the quality of your poop, is there a motility issue? And then slow motility results in the congestion, the constipation. And then when things move too quickly, that's where we get loose stools and diarrhea. So the importance of maintaining electrolyte balance. We talked about calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. This is all in Ashley's book as well. And when you develop your personal plan with your practitioner, taking into account the whole story, your stress, your sleep routine, your diet, your caffeine consumption, any nutrient deficiencies or needs, looking at your intake of proteins, fats, carbs, calcium, magnesium, potassium, looking at all of this, your hydration status, your movement. What resources do you need to optimize your body function? And the food piece is best done with a dietitian who eats, sleeps, and breathes how to use food as a functional tool for better health and understands the nuances of nutrition and is up with the latest studies. So the importance of building that foundation of better gut health, optimizing your digestion and hydration is the key. Chewing your food properly to allow the enzymes in the saliva to work, eating fermented foods to support your gut microbiome, looking after your mouth. That was interesting what she was saying, that to maintain a healthy ecosystem, the health of your oral microbiome really matters. So medications, dental work, processed foods, alcohol consumption, alcohol in your mouthwash and toothpaste, artificial sweeteners, they all change the acid alkaline balance of the oral microbiome. And the bitter receptors. Fascinating, isn't it? Bitter foods activate taste receptors in the mouth and the gut to stimulate natural GLP-1 production in different ways, but they both do it. Oh, just the science of it is fascinating. And her point about better nutrition, it needs to be delicious, not just from a joy perspective, but the biology, like physiologically, what happens, that eating yummy, healthy food that satisfies and excites us, there's receptors in our mouths that send messages to our weight health hormones, GLP and GIP, and engages them to go to work. And that, yes, our bodies do naturally tell us when to stop eating. If we're listening, the food starts to taste different, feel different. We feel different in our bodies. We start to feel hungry and we're satisfied. So there is this fantastic, delicious taste test in the book that's really great where you can start to determine where you're at with that. And the importance of taking in balanced nutrition, the 4 pillars of better nutrition: quantity, quality, timing, and balance. I love her be a qualitarian. Eat quality foods in appropriate quantities with nutrient balance at the right time and optimize your digestion so that you can make use of the good foods that you're eating. Otherwise, you can irritate, disrupt, and overwhelm your body. And the better timing that she was talking about of better nutrition, it's so important. It's not just what you eat and how much you eat, but when you eat and how often you eat. So we have an activity time when we eat and a recovery time when we don't. So we don't want to be taking from our activity period and dropping more stuff into the recovery window, and treating our bodies like a Formula One car, having those regular pit stops to check in and fuel the body with food and water and movement. And most women are undernourishing themselves and only eating 1 or 2 meals a day, if that. So what she was saying about intermittent fasting and a lot of people just fasting it for extremely long periods of time, it's too long for better blood sugar. So eating regularly throughout the day to reset appropriate hunger and satiety cues in addition to better blood sugar. The social jet lag with Todd Anderson is fantastic, isn't it? It's a fantastic term that our bodies feel sluggish and are incapable of operating at optimal levels when we've got the timing off, right? Whether it's our bodies being dysregulated by time zone differences, but also our eating window. So just honoring eating times, sleep and rest times, not eating late at night, altering the timing of when you eat according to the seasons with daylight savings, different temperatures, seasons, etc. It makes a difference. And for better digestion, timing, your body can only absorb and assimilate so much food at one time, so much protein, so much water. And for better blood sugar, the timing of fruit, eating too much fruit in one sitting, all that stuff. It's really, really an important piece of this. And what she was saying about blood sugar, particularly for women over 40, that our blood sugar has a huge impact on our ecosystem. So it affects our cognitive health, our energy, our mood. And with changing hormones, it raises our blood sugar. So it leads to insulin resistance, the pre-diabetes diagnosis that's so common for women over 40. And that hemoglobin A1C, the A1C that we get in a standard blood panel, it only gives us a 90-day average. It doesn't show us what's affecting our blood sugar. So wearing a CGM for 2 weeks is a really fantastic exercise to get data about what's affecting our blood sugar and the trends in our blood sugar throughout the day, and the importance of eating protein and healthy fats with carbs to slow down the assimilation of the sugars to prevent blood sugar spikes and crashes. And that elevated blood sugar is dehydrating. Oh, that really, really was so key to this. The insulin resistance, the pre-diabetes, the diabetes, that dehydration is a root cause of our weight health hormone challenges. So when you're bringing in the water, the body escorts the water, soluble nutrients into the cells. It's able to do that when we have enough potassium, an electrolyte, right, and a mineral. When your blood sugar's elevated, your body brings the water from the cells into the blood so it can hydrate. So hemoglobin A1C, the A1C is measuring that glycation that she was talking about. When the sugar is staying in the blood for too long and not getting into the cells where it's needed to provide the energy, it gets sticky. That's glycation. So nothing starts to get through. So that starts to make sense when she explains it like that. And the importance of movement. Walking, rebounding, foam rolling, twisting, stretching, yoga poses, finding ways to move our fascia, and also the middle of our bodies, because that's where the intestines are coiled up like the length of a football field if we stretched it out, right? So all that movement to help regulate our blood sugar and optimize those switch hormones. Managing stress and feeding joy, that relationship between offsetting the cortisol, one of our primary stress hormones, and the oxytocin, that love, joy, connection hormone, that we want more oxytocin, more joy, that plays into optimizing our body function. The importance of sleep hygiene and the supplements, recognizing that supplements are nutrients and they do contribute to our overall nutrition intake. Because creatine is getting so much hype right now. Really important note that she was making, that if your digestion's compromised, you won't absorb the supplement, and the form of creatine matters. So which one is appropriate for you? So you can't have great cognitive function with poor blood sugar and digestion, even if you're taking a creatine supplement. So if you're going to spend the money on creatine, make sure your digestion's optimized so you're absorbing the creatine that you're taking in. And are you taking in enough protein? Because creatine's an amino acid, right? To optimize the creatine. I love her point about willpower, that it's a fake muscle that does not play a role in effective weight management. We all get down on ourselves. I just don't have enough willpower. It's got nothing to do with it. And I think the biggest takeaway from this conversation is that we're not relying on one strategy, the magic bullet. It's about assembling a toolkit of multiple strategies. And that is what's so brilliant about this book. So we're going to put certain strategies together in the appropriate configuration to make our unique body run better in consultation with a practitioner who's going to help you develop a personalized plan. And her point about upgrading your software, that the body is an operating system and it's giving us signals all the time. So when you give your body the resources that it needs, it feels satisfied and it runs really well. And then when you don't, it's dissatisfied, it's unsatisfied, and it looks for things to get that quick hit. So the bliss factor of processed foods that she was talking about from Michael Moss's books, Salt, Sugar, Fat, and Hooked, they're fantastic books that talk about how processed foods are specifically formulated scientifically to hook us and make us want more of them. Fascinating reads, both of those books. So just listening to the signs in your body, paying attention and doing what you need to do. So the point about assessing and reassessing, that our goals are fluid, not static. So don't put your body on auto renew or the strategies on auto renew. I love that. So noticing that It's you're a huge ecosystem, part of all these other systems. So when you change one piece of the system, one part of the system, so with either changes to your diet, changes to lifestyle, new medication, new supplement, going on a GLP-1 med, a different kind of exercise, how is that affecting the other parts of your system? So checking in with your practitioner, checking in with yourself. So your best shot, as Ashley lays out in the book, is when you optimize your body and discuss potential supplements and medications with your practitioner, and then continue to assess and reassess them and give your body what it needs as it's changing. So the great news about this conversation, you can control your weight health more than you think. There are so many things that you can do yourself, whether you're on a medication or not. So many fantastic resources in the book. So get your copy of The Best Shot online or at bookstores. You can connect with Ashley and her team. There's a QR code in the book and all these fantastic resources online that you have access to when you get a copy of the book. It's really, really a really important book at any time, but particularly at this time where 1 in 10 people is on a GLP-1 medication. So whether you're on the meds or not, looking after your digestion, taking in balanced nutrition, all these things we're talking about, it's so, so important. So let me know what resonated with you from this episode. I want to hear your story.
I want to hear about your It Has to Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.